All right, everybody. We're not going to be doing the intro because I'm still sick and I just don't want to half-ass the intro, which the podcast has become known for. So we're going to skip the intro and we're just going to get right into it. We're going to be doing UFC Vegas 57, Tsarukyan versus Gamrot, preview, predictions, and analysis. Now, in total, we're going to be breaking down 5 fights, 1 prelim, like usual. Normally, we break down between 1 and 2 prelims, sometimes 3 if the prelims are a little bit juicy. And then we've got 4 fights on the main card. And I'm really excited for this card. I honestly think that this main event, I talked about it last week when I broke down Cater versus Emmett. I think that this main event is a fantastic fight. I think that it's 2 of the most high-level guys in that lightweight division, or 2 of the most high-level prospects in that lightweight division. And whoever gets through this fight, you got 18-2 versus 20-1. Whoever gets through this fight is going to be close to probably ranked, let's see, they're going to definitely be in the top 10, probably ranked around 8 or 9. So they would probably then get another fight in the top 10 and then one more in the top 5 if they do continue on that upward trajectory up the 155-pound rankings. But, I guess we could touch on Cater versus Emmett from last weekend at UFC Austin, or this past Saturday. I feel like overall the picks were pretty good. We had a decent run with the picks. Kyle Dawkins really shit the bed for us, and I think he shit the bed for a lot of people when they broke down this card. That's something that I don't think a lot of people expected. I don't think anybody expected Dolidze to go out there and finish Dawkins and finish him in the devastating fashion that he did in the first round. I know that Roman Dolidze was kind of the parlay killer for this last weekend, and I know he messed up a couple of mine, and I know he messed up a lot of people's parlays, with the MMA prediction and betting community that's all over, and part of the reason why you're probably listening to this podcast. But I hope this week is a little bit better for us. Let's see. So last weekend, I'm going to pull up the card, and I believe we went 4-2 as an overall last weekend or on Saturday. So I had Cater in the main event, which I fully believe Cater won that fight. And maybe we'll get into like a deeper dive analysis on a different episode, but I 100% believe Cater won 3 out of the 5 rounds. I don't think he won 4. I know some people said 4-1 for Cater, but I definitely think he won 48-47. He definitely won the 4th. That's when he hurt Emmett. That's when he spun him around. That's when he rocked him. And he definitely won the 5th. And I don't think Emmett did enough to win the first 3. I think Emmett probably lost the first round and then came back 1, 2, and 3, and then lost 4 and 5. Somewhere around there, I think. I'd have to go back and watch the fight again. But I definitely do think that Cater did enough to win that fight. And now Emmett looks like he's going to be getting a title shot up against the winner of Volkanovski versus Holloway, which takes place next weekend at UFC 276. Don't agree with it at all. But, you can't fault Josh Emmett like it's not his fault. So it is what it is. Cater should come back, get 1 or 2 more wins, and be right back in the same position. I think a good fight for him next would be against Arnold Allen. I think Arnold Allen or the Korean Zombie are good fights for Kelvin Cater in his next outing. I really like the Arnold Allen versus Kelvin Cater fight, so hopefully that gets made next, but I'm sure we'll get an announcement soon. Cater didn't take too much damage. He got hit with some big shots, but I don't think he took too much damage. He probably can come back decently quick, so we'll see how that works. The rest of the card, I had Kevin Holland by knockout. Surprised he didn't get the knockout. He hurt Tim Means in the fight a few times, but he ended up locking up the Darce choke submission. And then I had Damir Ismagulov to beat Garam Kutataladze by decision. That wasn't a pick that was made on the podcast, but I did pick Damir. Very, very close fight. I thought that Garam actually did enough to edge it out. But that third round, I think, kind of swayed the judges with the amount of effectiveness that Damir was able to use was able to establish with his jab from southpaw. That was one of the most high-level fights and high-level striking matchups I've ever seen, especially when it comes to like unranked competitors in the UFC. So if you didn't watch Damir Ismagulov versus Garam Kutataladze, I would go out of your way to check that out, and I would tell it to everybody. So if you haven't seen it, go watch that fight for sure. I had Adrian Yanez to win by decision. I thought Tony Kelly was going to last, but man, Adrian Yanez came out there and put a whooping of a lifetime on Tony Kelly. I mean, just multiple shot combinations, dropped him, knocked him out, kept hitting him after he was knocking him out. He was knocking him all over the place and got that first round KO. The Joe Lozon Cerrone fight was obviously canceled. Joaquin Buckley knocks out Albert Duraev. So Buckley still on his rise up to that in that middleweight division. Ricardo Ramos got a spinning elbow KO over Danny Chavez in the first round. Can we call him the spinning elbow master at this point, or the master of the spinning elbow? I think that's the second or third time he's got a KO with a spinning elbow. The first time was against Elmain Zahabi, I believe, or Ayman Zahabi, Faraz Zahabi's brother, I believe. And then obviously against Danny Chavez. I believe he got another one in his UFC career, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Phil Hawes put a whooping on Duran Win. I had him in a couple of my parlays to win by KO. He just looked probably the best he's ever looked since the beginning of that Chris Curtis fight before he got caught. And we're going to talk about the action man a little bit later. And then obviously the Kyle Dawkins and Roman Dolidze fight just didn't really pan out too well for us. But overall, a good night of fights, but the betting and the parlays can definitely get a little bit frustrating considering that I don't lose my ass, but I seem to constantly make wrong reads on one fight and it costs me every week, or I will get the right read and the judges will cost me. So just got to get smarter and get better at making the picks. And, overall picks are always good. We're always in the positive. Normally, I mean, there's been a couple times we've been negative on overall picks, but it is what it is, and on to the next, and that's what's going to be with UFC on ESPN 38 or UFC Vegas 57, and we're going to get into those picks right now. All right, and kicking off the predictions for this podcast, we're going to start on the prelims in the light heavyweight division. You got a battle between Carlos Black Jag Ulberg, who fights out of City Kickboxing in New Zealand, coming into this fight with a record of 6 victories and 1 defeat, going up 1 defeat, I guess. I don't know why I said defeats. Going up against Tafan Dadan Nchukwi. He comes back with a record of 6 victories and 2 defeats. So, I think this fight is interesting, but I also believe that this fight should be a pretty easy one for Black Jag. And I don't think that Tafan Nchukwi is a bad fighter at all. I think that he's got a lot of power. His left high kick, his left body kick, anything from that left side, the left overhand, the straight left, the front kicks up the middle. That left side, the rear side, is phenomenal. Now, he can switch. He's pretty elusive on his feet. I think he can switch orthodox and southpaw to ortho, vice versa. He does move pretty well. But a lot of the shots that he throws are loading up. But the one thing I think he does do very well is strike off the break. That's something you're going to have to look out for when you're Ulberg, whose fight's pretty tall, long, and rangy. He's a tall, long, lanky guy. Not lanky, but he's a tall, long, rangy guy, I should say. And he fights very long, and that's going to be a big weapon for him in this fight against Dadan. He's going to be landing that outside low kick, landing the inside low kick, landing those front kicks up the middle, trying to control the fight with the jab, control it with the 1-2 with the high kick wrapped around behind it. The problem is he's so long and rangy that he keeps his chin up in the air because he's so used to having that height and reach advantage that he can get away from shots that people would normally have to high guard, and he can just pull away from it. You saw it, get him in trouble against Kennedy and Shekwazu. And I think that it is a possibility that he gets clipped just like he did in that fight. Now, both these guys don't have huge experience, 6-1, 6-2. But Black Jag, Carlos Ulberg, has a lot of experience in professional kickboxing. And you could see it just by how calm, lackadaisical, and how, confident he is on the feet. Now, sometimes that confidence can bite him a little bit. In the fight against Fabio Cherant, which was his last fight, he looked good. He was dominating the fight, but he did get caught at certain points. He got caught off the break. He got caught when he got rushed by Fabio Cherant and got knocked off balance. Now, it wasn't technically a knockdown, but he did catch him because his chin's up in the air and he just kind of moves back in a straight line. But when he goes forward, he looks great. The the left hook into the right high kick, the 1-2 right body kick, the 1-2 right high kick. Like, all of his combinations are crisp and clean, and he does have phenomenal technique. He's got way better technique on the feet than Tafon and Chukwi. And I've heard some people say that they think that Tafon is going to be able to use his wrestling in this fight. And to be honest, I don't necessarily see the wrestling being a huge factor here. I think that it's possible that he uses the wrestling to get to the over-under clinch position up against the cage. And then as he breaks off the clinch, maybe he lands an overhand left over the guard as he circles off. Or maybe he gets into the clinch, tries to rough him up, and lands an elbow off the break. I think that's possible, but I also think that Carlos Ulberg has that experience in kickboxing, so he knows how to fight in the clinch. I do think that Tafon is definitely the stronger guy, but I think the speed advantage, I think the long distance striking advantage, I think the combination advantage, the volume, the versatility, that all goes to Carlos Ulberg. And he's going to have to fight the same way he always fights. This fight is not going to be much different for him with the, having to adopt his style. He's going to have to keep Tafon and Chukwi at a distance. He's going to have to poke and prod at him. Jab, right inside low kick. Jab, right inside low kick. Jab, fake the jab. Left hook, right body kick. Jab, right cross. 1-2, step off. 1-2, fade off. 1-2, 2-frame lead body kick. Like, he's going to just have to do what he does, and he's going to have to style on him. Now, I think Michael Bisping made a comparison to Luke Rockhold with Carlos Ulberg because he has that swagger about him when he's on the feet. When he looks good on the feet, he did it against Fabio Charant. He drops his hands a little bit more, he moves around a little bit more, and he does have that swagger in his step. But sometimes he's so lackadaisical and so overconfident that you can bum rush him, close the distance, pressure him, and land on the chin. Now, I do think that Tafon and Chukwi can do that. I do think that if he says, you know what, I'm done, I'm not playing this game no more, and he gets Ulberg up against the cage, maybe he walks forward, lands a left body kick, maybe he walks forward, lands a straight left, a right hook, cuts him off, switching stand or you know, hip bumping and shifting to his lead right side, and then cuts him off, and as he backs up, boom, a left overhand, boom, a left hook up against the fence. Because when you're backed up against the cage, you can move forward, left, or right, but you can't move backwards. And when you're a long, tall, rangy guy and you're used to having that reach advantage, you keep your chin up and you just kind of back away. But when you're circling away, people can trap you up against the cage, and Chukwi can land that left body kick. He can land that left front kick up the middle, and then he can fake it and boom, come over the top with the overhand left as Ulberg circles off. I do think Ulberg has a decent chin, but it does worry me a little bit here against Tafon. I think that if Tafon does land on the chin, whether it's a high kick, a left overhand, I do think that there is a possibility that he cracks the chin of Ulberg. We saw it get cracked against Kennedy and Jekwazu, and I think Tafon hits harder. And I think that if he's able to pressure Ulberg and get past that reach advantage, that distance control, get past all of his, sharp, clean, technical kickboxing and make it a dirty fight, it could be a long night for Carlos Ulberg, and the Don might shut the lights out. But in reality, I think that this is going to be a showcase fight for Carlos Ulberg. I think that this might be the best we've ever seen him look. I think he's going to use that long distance striking. I think he's going to use those front kicks to the body to slow down a pressure fighter. And in Chukwi, I think he's going to go 1-2, cross into the rear teep kick, jab, lead teep kick, jab, lead body kick, left, jab, left hook, right body kick, 1-2, right high kick, jab into the right high kick, left hook into the right high kick. He's going to mix up his combinations, but he's going to play smart, and he's going to just pick them apart over those 15 minutes. And I think eventually he's going to land one of those right high kicks on the chin of Nchukwi and knock him out. So my pick is Blackjag, or Carlos Blackjag Ulberg, to defeat Tafon Dadan Nchukwi via a second round knockout with a right high kick, breaking right through the guard and just knocking him out cold. But a big win here, in my opinion, a showcase fight is going to be on the horizon for Blackjag. Now we move to the first fight on the main card in the UFC's middleweight division. You've got a battle between what I like to call him in the Sanford MMA killer and UFC newcomer, 2-0 in the promotion, 2 back-to-back knockouts, in Chris the Action Man Curtis, who comes into the fight with a record of 28 victories and 8 losses in professional mixed martial arts, going up against one of the most decorated Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists in mixed martial arts and on the planet today, in Rodolfo, the black belt hunter Vieira, who comes into the fight with a record of 8 victories and 1 defeat. Now, Chris Curtis is, I call him the Sanford MMA killer because he won 2 fights that a lot of people believed he had no business in winning. He trains out of Extreme Couture with Coach Eric Nixick. Sean Strickland's in his corner all the time. Um, we love Eric Nixick on this podcast. He's been on here a couple times, and I always appreciate Coach Eric Nixick. Shout out to Coach Eric Nixick. Actually, we got to give him a little shout out here. But we call him the Sanford MMA killer because he beat 2 of the best guys out of that gym in Phil Hawes in his UFC debut. Hawes was beating him up. He was landing the right body kick. He was landing the 1-2. He was landing the left hook into the right body kick, the knees up the middle. The 1-2, the 3-2, he was piecing him up on the feet. And Chris Curtis likes to use that Philly shell kind of style of high guard where he blocks with the shoulder and then comes up with the high guard on the opposite side. And that's usually very good at avoiding the hooks. But a lot of the time in MMA, it's harder to avoid the straight shots. So the jabs were working very well against that Philly shell. The body shots were working decent in the right hand. So every time Phil Hawes was mixing up his combos, whenever he would switch from looping punches to straight punches, it was kind of penetrating that Philly shell. But the problem is Chris Curtis is good at rolling with shots. He's good at catching shots on his guard, using that Philly shell type of style. He's good at moving. He's good at timing you, cutting you off if you're orthodox. Right hook, left to uppercut to the body. Right hook, straight left. Right hook, left overhand, roll underneath. And he was noticing that Phil Hawes was getting so confident that he was like landing good combinations, but then he was kind of rushing forward and reaching with his hands, whether it was to try to tie up Chris Curtis, whether it was to try to land a straight left down the middle. He was kind of reaching forward, moving in with his head. Could have been to shoot a takedown. It could have been to close the distance and get to the clinch. But Chris Curtis was figuring that out. He was landing the jab, the left uppercut to the body, the right hook, the left uppercut to the body. But then he finally just timed it. Boom, landed a left overhand as Phil Hawes closed the distance, rolled underneath it to avoid any potential counter shots. And you could see Phil Hawes stumbling around. Boom, he jumps on him again. He didn't even have to jump on him. He landed that combo. He jumped on him, landed a little brief combo. Phil Hawes went down. Chris Curtis jumped on him and finished him in the first round after, like I said, he was getting pieced up. Phil Hawes looked good in that fight. Basically looked like the Duran win fight, but not that dominant, but he was on his way to kind of having a performance just like that in the fight against the Action Man. But the Action Man put him to sleep and showed that, they don't call him the Action Man for no reason. And then he goes in and he fights Brendan All-In Allen, another fight which people heavily counted him out, thought he was going to get taken down, thought he was going to get out-grappled. Brendan Allen did find a way to take his back, jump on his back, almost submits him, or looks to set up a rear naked choke. Chris Curtis gets out of it. They're on the feet. Again, Brendan Allen just jab, right body kick, trying to work. But, Chris Curtis looked better in the fight against Brendan Allen. He was landing more combos. He was landing the right jab, the right hook to the straight left, the right hook to the straight left to the body, straight left to the body, right hook up top, straight left to the body, double jab, straight left, jab, left to the body, right hook, straight left to the body. The combinations were working very well, and he was finding his way to get that outside foot, which in turn sets up your target for your power shot, but allows you to avoid the angle that the opponent needs to get that power shot off, because he would have to get the outside foot on you. We've talked about the outside foot battle a lot on this podcast, and it's kind of the same thing. Chris Curtis comes in and I think he landed a right hook, a left uppercut to the body, and then a right hook up top to the head. Let me check that out, actually. I'd like to pull that up if I can. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Chris Curtis. Let's see. Do we have it on here? The Phil Hawes knockout, but not. Let's see. Yeah, I think it is right here. All right. Just give me a second, guys. Sorry. I got to add, of course. That's how YouTube likes to work. But it's about to end, and then we can Find the combination. Let's see. Yeah, so it was a left to the body. Let's see. A right hook, a left uppercut to the body, and a right hook. And then Brendan Allen tried to come back with his own right hook, but Chris Curtis got there first. It was lead versus rear. Right hook, left uppercut to the body, boom, right hook on the chin. You see Allen kind of wobble. He goes all over the place. And then that's when Curtis jumps on him. Right hook, left straight, right knee up the middle, and then gets in the clinch. Boom, boom, knees up the middle. He just poured it on and he put him out in the first round again. Chris Curtis, back-to-back first-round finishes, back-to-back wins over two of the top guys out of Sanford MMA. And, I think he's on the trajectory here against Adolfo, the black belt Vieira. Now you look at Adolfo Vieira. Vieira is a highly decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And if Adolfo Vieira finds a way to take the back of Chris Curtis, to take him down, to use those inside and outside trips, to work from the top position, he's going to submit Chris Curtis. But the thing is, dude, Chris Curtis has 8 losses in his career, 28-8. He's only been submitted once out of those 8 losses, but he's never gone against a grappler who's as high caliber as a Rodolfo Vieira. The problem is his striking has gotten better. I will say that. His striking has gotten better, but he's still not comfortable on the feet. He's very good with the jab, very good with the right hand. He's got a very solid jab. You saw it showcased in his last fight against Dustin Stoltzfus. He can pop the jab. It's pretty straight. There's not really a ton of wind up on it. It's quick, it's concise, it's precise. He's got the ability to use that jab. But against a striker the caliber of a Chris Curtis, who's going to look to get that outside foot against the orthodox fighter, the right hook, straight left, the jab into the right hook, into the straight left, the left uppercut to the body, right hook, straight left. I think he's going to have Rodolfo shooting for his life here. And Rodolfo is not comfortable on the feet. He was a little bit comfortable against Stoltzfus, but Stoltzfus is, again, another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's known for his grappling. He's not known for his striking. So Rodolfo felt a little bit more confident to stay on the feet. I don't think he's going to feel the same against a guy like Chris Curtis, who's got knockout power, who's got good technique on the feet, who will kind of lull you into a full sense of security just to be able to find that opening to crack your chin with that overhand left, with the right hook, with the left uppercut. He's going to kind of lull you into a full sense of security, look for his openings, and then bomb away on your chin. And Rodolfo Vieira is so uncomfortable on the feet if he's getting pressured, if he's getting combinations landed on him. Like the fight against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, he wore himself out in the grappling. He looked better in the fight against Stoltzfus. He did. I can't lie there. He looked good on the feet. Like I said, good jab, good right hand. But you're not going to play that game against Chris Curtis. And yes, I do think that if Chris Curtis gives his back up, it could be a very short night, and the black belt hunter could wrap up another opponent in the UFC. I definitely think that's a possibility. But like I said, Chris Curtis has only been submitted one time in his UFC career. 1 loss by KO, 1 by submission, and 6 losses by decision. 28 wins overall, 16 wins coming by way of KO, 1 submission, and 11 decisions. When you look at Rodolfo Vieira, he's 8-1 as a professional mixed martial artist. He's got 7 wins by submission. They don't call him the black belt hunter for no reason. 1 win by knockout, no decisions. He's lost 1 time by submission, and that was to Fluffy Hernandez against a guy who's not a decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, who's not the best Jiu-Jitsu guy in the UFC, but he tired him out, was able to survive the grappling, and then piece him up on the feet with combinations and pressure, have him panic shooting, and then locked up that guillotine choke. It's a guy who's got he's got a very big muscular frame for this division. And if you're able to get the lactic acid in that muscle, and then you're able to add in the pressure, the power, and the combinations that Chris Curtis has on the feet, he's going to have Rodolfo Vieira panic shooting. If Vieira doesn't, shoot in under an overextension of a left hand or a right hook and take the back of Chris Curtis and lock him up with the back control, or take him down and get to the top position and then allow Chris Curtis to give up his back and then work from there, I don't see this being a successful fight for Rodolfo Vieira. He's good, but he's not going to be able to strike with a guy who's the caliber of Chris Curtis on the feet. and he's also not going to be able. And you know what? Honestly, that Stoltzfus fight might be the worst thing that ever happened to him because he might be a little bit more comfortable and confident in his striking, and he might think that he could stay on the feet for a little bit longer than he needs to against a guy in Chris Curtis, and he's going to get caught with that right hook and get caught with that overhand left. I think Chris Curtis is going to land that overhand on the chin of Vieira, going to wobble him, and then he's going to standing TKO him on the feet. He's going to bum rush him, straight left, right hook, left uppercut, knees up the middle in the clinch, break off, right hook, straight left, left elbow, right elbow. He's going to hurt him on the feet with the overhand and then jump on him and get the TKO. I'm going to go with Chris the Action Man Curtis to defeat Adolfo Vieira with another first round TKO victory. I think it's going to be Phil Hawes, Brendan Allen, Adolfo Vieira, all first round finishes for the Action Man in the UFC, and another rising contender coming out of Eric Nixick's Extreme Couture in Las Vegas, Nevada. But I do have the Action Man, Chris Curtis, to defeat the black belt hunter, Adolfo Vieira, via first round TKO. He's going to be way too much for Adolfo on the feet. And if Adolfo wasn't comfortable before, he's definitely not going to be comfortable now. All right, we're going to jump into Nate Maness versus Umar Nurmagomedov. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about the betting lines for the fights we broke down so far. So with the Chris Curtis and Adolfo Vieira fight, Curtis is at a minus 155 favorite. Adolfo's a plus 135. I think that's lined pretty damn well. If you're going to play the Chris Curtis side, maybe you wait for Chris Curtis by KO, because you're probably going to be looking at getting like a plus 200, plus 250, maybe even higher than that. But I don't expect it to be much higher. So maybe you want to play the Chris Curtis by KO side, because I don't necessarily expect him to, go 15 minutes with Vieira. I don't think Vieira can last that long. And if Vieira is able to use that jiu-jitsu, top control, and world-class ground game, then I don't expect Curtis to last that long either. So I think Curtis by KO is the best play here, but obviously the fight props haven't come out yet. And then another close line with the Nchukwi and Carlos Ulberg fight. Ulberg is at a minus 115. Tafon Nchukwi is at a minus 105. I like the Ulberg side here just in general. Minus 115, you can't go wrong there. If you want to play the Nchukwi side because you're a little bit worried about the chin of Ulberg and the fact that he pulls back with his head straight up in the air and can get cracked on the chin off the break, or if he gets pressured, then I wouldn't be mad at you for playing either side. So, no matter what side you're on, this is a close fight. I lean Ulberg. I've got Ulberg in a parlay for myself. But if you want to play the Nchukwi side, that's fine. If you want to play the Ulberg side, that's cool with me. But I definitely think this is a close fight either way. So if I was going to pick between the first two fights to play, I would definitely pick the Curtis side over Adolfo Vieira, and then maybe wait for the knockout prop to come out, because you're going to be looking at getting plus money for Curtis to get a KO, and that's 85 to, I don't want to give numbers, but if he's going to win the fight, that's probably how he's going to win, So we're going to move into the fight in the welterweight division, or I'm sorry, the bantamweight division, between Nate Mayhem Maness, who comes into the fight with a record of 14 victories and 1 defeat, going up against the, I would say, most well-rounded Nurmagomedov, aside from Khabib, in the cousin of Khabib, in Umar Nurmagomedov, who comes in with an undefeated professional record of 14 victories and no defeats. So you got 14-1 for Nate Maness to 14-0 for Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, honestly, we'll talk about the betting lines later on, but this is severely, severely skewed to be in the favor of Umar Nurmagomedov. Excuse me, guys. God. All right, we're better now. It's severely skewed on the side of Umar. I know he's got the Nurmagomedov name. I know he's undefeated. I know he's probably the most well-rounded guy, but he hasn't fought in the UFC that much. The guy only has 2 fights in the UFC. One, a win over Brian Kelleher, and then another, which was a win over, let's see, the guy's name is escaping me right now, Sergey Morozov. Both were wins via submission, via rear naked choke. But other than that, man, he hasn't fought in the UFC. He's got a lot of submission wins on his record. I mean, you look at it overall, he's 14-0, 7 submissions, 6 decisions, 1 KO. But you beat Brian Kelleher, who, yes, he's a good fighter. Yes, he's well-rounded. He's also fighting on this card. He's definitely beat some good guys, but I don't want to call him a gatekeeper, but he's kind of like if you get past Brian Kelleher with flying colors, then you can move up to the top of the division. And yes, he did get past him pretty easily and one-sidedly in their fight. Yeah, I agree. But he hasn't fought a huge, huge test. Yes, Kelleher's a great test. It definitely is. And Kelleher is definitely not a pushover. I love Brian Kelleher. But, I don't know if Umar definitely doesn't justify a minus 900. And they're giving him that because, yes, he is well-rounded. Yes, he's got the best kicking game out of any of the Nurmagomedovs. Out of Saeed, out of Habib and Umar. Umar's got the best kicking game, especially from that southpaw position, man. The front kicks to the body. The lead leg question mark kick is one of the fastest question mark kicks in the game. He probably does have the fastest question mark kick in the game. He's got good control from the clinch, good ability to play with the feet, and work his takedowns and work from the top position, get you to give up your back and, controlling your wrist with the Dagestani handcuff, which is known by a lot of the guys out in Dagestan, the Dagestani style of wrestling. He's very good at it, but he has the best kicking game out of, all of the Nurmagomedovs. Yes, he's undefeated, but the line is not justified. I could see maybe like a minus 350 at the highest. That's what I would put him as. And, I know that the bookies like to do this where they inflate these guys, unbelievably. But this is a fight where you don't play it at all unless you want to take a stab at the dog and Nate Maness. Now, Maness is 14-1. He's coming back at a plus 600. Man, a plus 600 against a guy who's only had 2 fights in the UFC. Yes, he's decorated. Yes, he's well-rounded. Yes, the hype is deserved. But he still hasn't had that huge gut check test yet. And we don't really know, man. Nate Maness is definitely a dog, man. The guy's a dog. And he's got a very, very solid boxing game and really solid takedown defense. That's actually a stat I'd like to pull up really quick. Maness is not an easy guy to take down. His overall takedown defense, we'll pull it up real quick. He's got an 86% takedown defense. Umar has a 37% takedown accuracy. But again, the takedown accuracy with these guys with the Dagestani style of wrestling, they shoot to a reshoot to a reshoot to another shot. Like they might shoot for one takedown attempt, but they'll chain it together. A head on the outside single or a head on the inside single to a head on the outside single to a double leg, run the pipe. If you defend that, they work the shuck you to the side and take your back. Then they work with the trips, playing with your feet and dragging you back to the mat, then dragging you in one direction, pulling you in the opposite direction, changing directions to, distribute your weight in the unequal positions and then take you down. So he might shoot one takedown, but that one takedown attempt is going to chain into 2, 3, 4 takedown attempts, and he might get you on the 3rd or 4th takedown. And once he gets you down, that's when he's going to work his game. That's when he's going to put you up against the cage. That's when he's going to leg lace you. That's when he's going to work with the Dagestani handcuff. He's going to put his head on your chin and he's going to grind on you and he's going to hit you, get you to give up your back when you're uncomfortable and then lock up a submission. But Nate Maness, man, they don't call him mayhem for no reason. This guy in his UFC fights has been dropped, almost finished, and then come back to win in fights where he was getting dominated. The Luke Sanders fight, he was getting dominated, getting pieced up. He landing combinations over and over again. He finds a way to take the back of Luke Sanders after hurting him to the body, landing good shots on the feet. He's got a very solid right hand, takes the back, locks up the rear naked choke, boom, gets the submission. And then you look at his other fight. We'll pull up some more stuff for Nate Maness, Mr. Mayhem. Let's see. You look at his fight against Tony Gravely. That was his last fight. Tony Gravely, he won via second round TKO. In the first round, it was back and forth, but Gravely was doing some good work. The thing with Nate Maness is he has very, very sneaky timing on a pot shot right hand. His timing is so good that he gets you to the point where you're literally just about to extend from your high guard. So like as you're about to move your hand to extend, he pops in the right hand. Boom, boom, pops in the 1-2. Boom, pop shots the right hand. And he's catching you with such good timing. It's very, very sneaky with that right hand. And when he switches to southpaw, it's very good work with the jab from southpaw. He's got a very decorated and educated right hand, whether it's from the rear side with the power straight or the lead side with the power jab. He works that right hand very, very well. And he's also good from orthodox with the jab. Very good, solid jab, jab, left hook to the body. 1-1-2, 1-2, pot shot right hand, 2-1, 2-3, 1-1-2, hook to the body. He mixes up his boxing combinations very well. And he's got, like I said, an 86% takedown defense. This guy is not easy to take down. He is sometimes controlled up against the cage. And that's where Umar does a lot of his really solid work. He gets you in the over-under position. He works to lock his hands together in the over-under and then drag you one way, drag you back the other, working with a lot of trips, inside and outside foot sweeps and leg trips. That's what he likes to do. And if Maness plays around for too long and gets a little bit lazy sitting on the cage with his back to the cage, if Umar is not able to take him down and submit him, he will just bank on rounds. At distance, the boxing advantage is 100% on the side of a Nate Maness. Maness is orthodox. Umar is southpaw, but he does fight from orthodox as well. But his best work is from southpaw with the lead leg. The lead leg kicks are some of the most gorgeous kicks you'll ever see in MMA. The speed, the technique, everything is flawless with how he throws those kicks. A lead leg front teep kick to the body, a lead leg round kick, jab, hook, hide the lead body kick behind the hook, jab, lead question mark kick, lead round kick, and then I believe in the fight against Sergey, he landed a lead leg round kick from the left side and dropped him or hurt him really bad. Let me see if I can pull that up. I think it should be on here somewhere. Okay, it's probably on UFC Fight Pass, but he dropped him with a lead leg high kick, I believe. And I think he was in orthodox. He may have been in southpaw. It could have been the right leg, which would make sense with what we were just breaking down. But he's got a really solid kicking game. But Maness is boxing the jab, the 1-1-2, the 1-2, and the shots to the body, mixing it up with the straight right, and then coming up and hitting Tony Gravely with that right shovel uppercut. It was like a shovel hook. He hit him on the chin, dropped him. He's able to survive in fights where he gets dropped. Gravely dropped him, hurt him bad. Luke Sanders was beating the piss out of him on the feet and out wrestling him. And he just finds a way to really grab himself by the balls and be like, yo, I'm not going to go out like this. This is not how it's going to work. And he's got that dog in him. Like I said, man, if you wanted to play Nate Maness on the money line at plus 600, I wouldn't be mad at you. I wouldn't fault you. I actually would probably encourage it. If you're going to play the Umar side, I think betting him to win by submission is your best bet. Just because Nate Maness likes to stay on the cage for a little bit, he gets stuck up against the cage in the over-unders, the double underhooks, and sometimes can, play around for too long there. I think that can open up the sweeps of Nurmagomedov, the ability to shuck him to the side in the body lock, work to take his back, get the hooks in, and work a submission. I definitely think that's something that Nate Maness does not want to do. But at range, if he can close that kicking range off and get into the boxing range and start landing the jab, start landing the 1-2, start landing the jab from southpaw, and working those boxing combinations, Nurmagomedov hasn't fought a lot of top-level competition in the UFC yet, and I know he's got the Nurmagomedov name, but it wouldn't surprise me if Maness is able to pop him a few times on the feet, get him stuck behind the jab and kind of have Nurmagomedov shooting for his life when he shouldn't be, when he should be comfortable, and he just makes him uncomfortable. And I think that's what Maness does best, is making you uncomfortable, thinking you're going to get him out of there, but he continues to just push forward and find a way to win. But when it comes to an overall pick, I am going to lean on the grappling, top pressure, and the kicking game of Umar to get him a victory here. I think that those lead leg question mark kicks, the teep kicks to the body, are going to make it harder for Maness to close the distance and work from boxing range. I think he's going to use those kicks, use those little boxing combinations in punctuating the boxing with the kicking game. And then when Maness tries to close the distance, he's going to put him up in the clinch, get him up against the cage, work the over-unders, work the knees to the body, work the knees to the thigh, play with the outside and inside foot sweeps, take him down. Maness is going to try to get back up, and he's going to give up his back, and Umar's going to lock up another rear naked choke submission victory. So my pick is Umar Nurmagomedov to defeat Nate Mayhem Maness via I'll go second round. I think that Maness is going to survive the first. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I'm going to go with a second round rear naked choke submission for the massive favorite in Umar Nurmagomedov. But like I said, man, if you're gonna play Umar, you play him to win by submission. If you're gonna play the dog, play him straight up, because it would not shock me if he was able to drag Umar into deep waters and piece him up with the slick boxing and the great timing with the boxing combinations, especially the right hand that Nate Mayhem Maness possesses. And now we move to the co-main event of the evening, and it's a fantastic fight. 100% one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most on this card. In the UFC's welterweight division, you've got a battle between the number 10 ranked UFC veteran in the Haitian sensation, Neil Magny, who comes into the fight with a record of 26 victories and 8 defeats, going up against the number 15 ranked undefeated fighter at 15-0 in Shavkat Nomad Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov versus Magny. Can Rakhmonov continue the undefeated streak and the streak of finishes, or will Magny put a stop to the hype train and derail it all in one night, getting a huge victory for his career? Man, really solid fight here. I love everything about this fight. I've talked about this fight on my top 10 prospects to watch in 2022 video on my YouTube channel. You can find it by just searching Touch 'em Up Podcast on YouTube, and it'll link you right to the channel. But man, this is a close one. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people throughout the career of Neil Magny have counted him out. And then every time you feel like he's going to get the job done, he kind of shits the bed for a lot of you guys. He trains out of Elevation Fight Team Elevation. He trains with some good guys like Corey Sandhagen. He used to train under Elliot Marshall, but I don't believe Elliot Marshall is the coach there anymore. But one of my buddy's friends, Mikey, shout out to Mikey. We'll give him a little shout out on the podcast. But his buddy, Justin, who is a pro fighter right now, is actually out. I don't know if he's still there, but I think he's out there right now working at Team Elevation with Neil Magny, Corey Sandhagen. There's a lot of guys out there. I don't know everybody off the top of my head, but those are the guys that I can think of. Excuse me. Jesus. Okay, but this is a good fight, and I think that there's a lot of areas of the fight where Rakhmonov can take over, and I think there's really only one path to victory for Neil Magny, but it's the way he always fights. So is it really that difficult for him to pull off? Not necessarily, but I do think he's got an uphill battle here against the undefeated Nomad, definitely. We're going to look at a little bit of the stats. Magny actually has a 2-inch height advantage at 6'3". Rakhmonov comes back at 6'1". The reach, 80-inch reach for Magny to a 77-inch reach for Rakhmonov. So a 2-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. Magny's going to have to use that the entire 15 minutes of this fight. He's going to have to keep Rakhmonov behind the jab, the 1-1-2, the 1-2, 1-1-2, front kick to the body, 1-2, high kick, 1-2, lead high kick. He's going to have to poke and prod and use his volume striking and mix in his takedown attempts against Rakhmonov for 15 minutes. I honestly believe that, Magny just has to fight how he always fights, but against a guy who's as well-rounded and as sharp as a Rakhmonov, that's not going to be an easy test. It's not going to be an easy task, I should say. He's got a very solid striking game, does Rakhmonov. Really good overhand right, good jab, good left hook. Mixes his combinations together very well. He's got a very solid kicking game. You saw him knock out Carlston Harris with a spinning wheel kick up against the cage. Boom, caught him, hurt him bad, and then jumped on him with some thunderous ground and pound. Vicious ground and pound. Was able to play with his feet from the top position in the stack guard, find a way. Boom, boom, boom. Right when he touched the chin, just thunderous ground and pound. In his UFC debut, he comes in against a veteran again, and Alex Cowboy Oliveira, in a fight that people thought Oliveira was going to probably make it a very difficult fight for him. And he comes in there, gets hit with a pot shot right hand, and Oliveira is able to avoid any potential counters. But then Rakhmonov comes back, boom, times the jab, comes over the top with the right hand, ties Oliveira up against the cage. They go back and forth. Rakhmonov isn't able to do too much against the cage, but on the break, boom, lands a combination, lands a solid knee to the body. Lands another knee to the body against Carlston Harris. Very good at timing the knee to the body as the opponent steps in. And against a really tall, long, rangy guy, I think if Magny tries to close that distance, we're going to see Rachmanov try to go with that rear knee to the body to take some of the wind out of Neil Magny. And I think that Neil Magny is a good grappler. He mixes his striking and his grappling together very well. He is well-rounded, but I don't think he's going to want to play around in the clinch for too long against the Shavkat Rachmanov. I think if he does push him up against the cage, he's going to want to land some good shots and then break and then maybe re-enter. A lot of entries and re-entries with the clinch positions for Neil Magny, because I don't think he's going to be able to control Shavkat up against the cage for as long as he believes he might be able to. Magny's best weapon is to play with that jab, use that jab from long range, boom, pop the jab, pop the 1-2, 1-2, 1-1-2, 1-2-3, jab, 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 cross, fake the jab, right hand, fake the right hand, double jab, right hand. He's going to have to mix up the timing on his combinations, but keeping him at reach, keeping him at a distance, throwing the front kicks to the body, throwing, teep kicks, high kicks, 1-1-2, 1-2-3, shot to the body. It's all about the volume for Neil Magny, and that's always been how Neil Magny is. Now, if you go back and you look at Rachmanov's record, he is undefeated. He is undefeated at 15-0. But I believe all 15 of those wins come by way of finish. You look at his record. He's got, he's got 8 wins by knockout, 7 wins by submission. Never been to a decision. All 15 wins are coming by way of finish. In the UFC, like we said, he's got some rear naked choke submission over Michel Prazeres. He's got, in the second round, he's got a first round spinning hook kick KO over Carlston Harris at 4 minutes and 10 seconds. And then he's got a first round guillotine choke submission over Alex Cowboy Oliveira in his UFC debut in the first round. So 2 first round finishes by submission and knockout, and then a second round submission victory over Michel Prazeres, who is also a decorated grappler. This is the thing. You look at Neil Magny. He has the ability to be out-grappled, out-wrestled, and out-controlled. When he's going up against a dominant wrestler, he can use his wrestling, grappling, and top pressure against guys who aren't well known for their grappling or who don't have a solid grappling background. The Haitian Sensation can do that. He's got 7 wins by KO, 3 by submission, 16 by decision. He loves to go the distance. Like I said, using the volume striking, kind of drowning the opponent under his pace, his pressure. The best weapon for Magny is the volume and the cardio, and everybody knows it. You look at his wins or his losses. He lost to Michael Chiesa, who was able to out-grapple him, out-position him on the top. And he lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio by KO. He lost to submission with an arm triangle choke to RDA. He lost via TKO to Lorenz Larkin, lost via submission to Damian Maia. I think that lost via submission to Sergio Moraes via triangle choke, lost the decision to Seth Baczynski. He has the ability to get out-grappled, a submission via guillotine choke. So Magny has been submitted. Out of his 8 losses, 4 losses come by way of submission. Now, I do think that the striking on Rachmanov with the power that he possesses, he's very good at, fading off to the rear side, circling, using his lateral movement. His ability to get out of the way of the counter shots and then come back and land combinations on you is very, very solid from Rachmanov. But I think the key to the victory here for him is to use that grappling, use it often, and use it early. I think he's going to look to get Magny up against the cage. He's going to look to, actually, you know what? I wouldn't recommend putting Magny up against the cage, because then he can use his grappling. He can use his clinch game. He can, wear on you, kind of push you up against the cage, get his head on your chin, and play that type of game. I think what he's going to have to do is let Magny get into a false sense of security, let him get behind that jab, throw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch combos, but on the 3rd or 4th punch, intercept the combination and time it with a takedown entry, whether it's, entering into the body lock, whether it's entering in on a single leg, entering in on a double leg, changing position, chaining the takedown attempts together. That's what he's going to have to do. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see from Rachmanov. I think Rachmanov will land some good shots over the jab of Neil Magny. Magny does switch stances back and forth from orthodox to southpaw. He's very good when he gets into his flow. It's really hard to stop him. But I think that overhand right over the jab of Magny from Rachmanov is going to be solid. I think he's going to look to use that knee to the body, because if he hits Magny with a good knee to the body and Magny's able to clinch up and they're not against the fence, Rachmanov can use those double unders, fish for the double unders, use that pummeling game, and then work to get the takedowns. I think he will get Magny down to the ground, work some solid ground and pound. And in that ground and pound, the thunderous ground and pound that he possesses, Magny's going to give up his back, and Magny's going to get submitted with a rear naked choke. So my pick in this fight is the undefeated Shavkat Nomad Rakhmonov to continue the undefeated streak and improve to 16-0 and get a second round rear naked choke submission. Now we move to the main event of the evening in a fantastic fight between two fighters just right on the cusp, not even on the cusp, but one in the top 10. Or no, yeah, they're both right on the cusp of the top 10. So I don't know what I'm saying. In the lightweight division, you've got a battle between the number 11 ranked Arman Ahalkaletis. I believe that's how you say it. Ahalkaletis. Tsarukyan, who comes into the fight with a record of 18 victories and 2 defeats, going up against the number 12 ranked Matthias Gamrot, who comes into the fight with a record of 20 victories and 1 defeat. So number 11 versus number 12 in the 155-pound division, 18-2 versus 20-1. This is a very, very tricky fight, man. This is, if anybody's looking to bet for these cards, stay away from the main event. Don't touch it. I'm sorry. I know everybody's going to be riding Tsarukyan side because of his, training at Tiger Muay Thai, working with the Hickman brothers, I believe, or he did at some point, I think. I could be wrong. Working with Piotr Jan as a training partner. I believe he also worked at ATT, American Top Team, for some of the, his camps. Tsarukyan's a monster. I picked him to beat Joel Alvarez, and a lot of people were on the Alvarez side there because of his length, his reach, and his striking ability. And, I wasn't surprised that people were picking Joel Alvarez, but I knew that Tsarukyan was just an overall better fighter, and he showcased that with the wrestling, the top control, avoiding all the submissions, keeping the head on the chest, really suffocating Joel Alvarez, and then those vicious elbows from the guard, man, just constantly, just boom, 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 constant elbows, and just literally ripping apart the face of Joel Alvarez, making him a complete bloody mess. I mean, just busting him open. With Gamrot, he's new to the UFC, but technically a lot of people believe he should still be undefeated. He had 1 loss in the UFC, so he's 2-1. Wins over a submission victory over Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens, and then a TKO via a knee to the body. I believe he popped the rib of Carlos Diego Ferreira. So a KO and a submission, and then he has a decision loss to the guy who just fought in a phenomenal fight last weekend with Damir Ismagulov in Garam Kutataladze. So I'm excited to see where Kutataladze goes in his career following this, controversial split decision loss. I do think Damir did enough in that 3rd round with his jab to kind of, win the round and steal it, just with the damage he was causing on the face of Garam and the success and effectiveness he was able to have with his jab in that 3rd round, I believe, stole it for him. But it was definitely a close fight. And if they would have given the fight to Garam Kutataladze, I would not have been mad. I mean, it was a very close fight. Not the same story for the main event with Cater and Emmett, which we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. But yeah, that's a story for a different day. Really disappointed in the decision. A close fight, but I feel like Kelvin easily won that. But it is what it is, But Matthias Gamrot, gamer, he's exactly that. His nickname fits him perfectly. The dude's a gamer. I mean, he's going to come forward. He's known for his wrestling, his scrambling ability, and his slick submission game. That's what he's known for. He's very, very solid at chaining takedown attempts together. His scrambles are unbelievable, stuffing a takedown, faking a takedown, getting the opponent to sprawl, then pulling back, then jumping into the front headlock position. Then when they get up from the front headlock, you go to the double leg, then you go to the single leg, then you go to the knee tap, then you work the ankle picks, just transitioning from takedown to takedown to takedown. And he doesn't give up. He's relentless with his wrestling. You might take him down, get back up, take you down again, get up, take you down again, work to the body lock, take you down again. He doesn't get too much off with his ground and pound from the top position, but his wrestling, his scrambling, and the constant takedown attempts and pressure, I think that's going to give Tsarukyan a little bit of trouble here. I know Tsarukyan has great striking. He's definitely the better kicker in this match. He has really, really solid work with the right hand faded off into the lead left high kick. He's got a very solid check left hook. He likes to feint with the lead hand, kind of lifting it up and down, left and right, kind of getting you to get hypnotized by it. And then he'll pop the jab, and then he'll move his lead hand, kind of playing with you. Boom, a lead left hook as you step in like he caught Christos Siagos with. Got good ground and pound, good takedown, phenomenal wrestling and phenomenal scrambling ability on the Tsarukyan side as well. And you saw that showcase tenfold in his UFC debut where he had the most competitive fight of Islam Makhachev's career to date. I mean, it was back and forth. The wrestling was back and forth. Even did a little fireman's carry sit out. Did get one takedown on Islam, but it was Whizzer fighting for Whizzers, stuffing the doubles, cutting the corner, shooting the single, constantly just back and forth with the wrestling. If you haven't watched it, Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev, definitely go back and check that out before this fight goes down this weekend. It was a phenomenal showcase of grappling, scrambling ability, transitioning from takedown attempt to takedown attempt, reversals into position changes. It's everything you could ask for with high-level grappling in mixed martial arts, in high-level wrestling at that. But I feel like people are counting out Mateusz Gamrot a little bit too much in this fight. I haven't seen a whole lot of people leaning on the side of Gamrot, and let me tell you something. His scrambling and relentlessness with the takedowns and the constant ability to shoot, and with his submission threat, he can be trouble for Tsarukyan on the floor. I definitely think he can be trouble. I don't think it's going to be easy for Tsarukyan to get these takedowns against a guy like Gamrot. I think on the feet, it's going to be definitely favorable on the side of the number 11 ranked Tsarukyan. I think he's got better kicks. He's got more power in his shots. But, Gamrot's got a good right hand. He's got a good jab. He does keep his head on the center line and kind of overextend with some of his combinations. And when you do that, it's going to be open for the high kicks of Tsarukyan, the right hand of the lead left high kick, the left body kick, the left hook. It's going to be open for the combinations and the sharp technique with the speed that Tsarukyan showcases. But Gamrot's a little bit awkward to the point where his strikes don't look the most technical or efficient, but he's able to land on you at awkward angles, uses really good lateral movement, always circling, moving away, pop, pop, circling, pop, 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 boom, 1-2. He landed the 1-2 on Scott Holtzman, dropped him, and then jumped on him to get the finish. I mean, the knee to the body against Diego Ferreira that popped the rib. He's kind of an awkward fighter where it doesn't look the most technical or tactical, but he's got a little bit of swagger in his step, and he's got awkward angles with the punches that he throws, and I do think he can give Tsarukyan a little bit of trouble, but I definitely think if there's an area for Gamrot to win this fight, it's by using the takedowns, using the top control, using the scrambling ability, and just trying to tire out Tsarukyan over 25 minutes. We don't know who has the better cardio. We saw Tsarukyan push the pace against Islam Makhachev, and they went back and forth with the wrestling, and Tsarukyan did get tired in the third round, but I think anybody would get tired in a fight that's that back and forth with that many transitions, that many reversals, that much chain wrestling. Anybody's going to get tired there, so I don't think you can take a lot from that, aside from how good Tsarukyan's wrestling is paired with his great striking, with the technical ability that he has. And I don't think you'd expect anything less from a guy who trains out at Tiger Muay Thai and has a training partner in Piotr Yan. He's going to have good striking. Training at Tiger Muay Thai, you're going to have good kicks. You're going to have good defensive ability. And I do think that overall, the more well-rounded fighter is Tsarukyan with the wrestling ability, the takedown defense, the takedown attempts, and the powerful striking with the speed that he possesses. But I definitely think that, Gamrot has that X factor where he's not perfect in anything that he does, but he finds a way to get a finish, and he finds a way to push the pace and make it a dirty fight. I think he can do that against Tsarukyan. I think he can definitely work that grappling, work those chain wrestling attempts, work to just kind of tire out Tsarukyan, make it dirty, get him against the cage, land knees to the body, land the 1-2 down the center, pop him with the jab, 1-2, 1-1-2, 1-2, jab, lead hook, lead body kick, switch southpaw, jab, right hook, right body kick, hide the body kick behind the hook. Gamrot is definitely capable of winning this fight, and I think a lot of people are going to be leaning towards Tsarukyan and just, completely writing off Gamrot. You don't understand. The fight he lost against Garam Kutateladze, he was able to use that grappling, use that wrestling, use those takedown attempts, and out-wrestle Kutateladze in the third round. But he got outstruck in the first two, but it could have gone the way of Gamrot, and Gamrot could be sitting here right now at 21-0 in his pro MMA career. He hasn't been in the UFC that long. He trains alongside a lot of the top guys at American Top Team, Jorge Masvidal, Renato Moicano, Dustin the Diamond Poirier. I think Poirier used him in the lead up to his fight against Charles Oliveira in his camp. I'm not 100% sure. I could be wrong, but I think Tsarukyan also trains at American Top Team and Tiger Muay Thai. They kind of go back and forth. So they train at the same teams, but man, it's a close fight. The line is for the betting aspect of this fight. They have Tsarukyan as a, let's see, a minus 255 favorite to a plus 215 for Gamrot. I think that's a little bit high. I would have Tsarukyan at like a minus 190 and come back at plus 165, plus 170 for Gamrot. I think it's that close of a fight. And over 5 rounds in a fight where neither guy has gone 5 rounds in the UFC. But, Gamrot is an ADCC grappling jiu-jitsu world champion. I believe a multiple-time grappling and jiu-jitsu world champion. So you can't write off the submission ability, the grappling, the scrambling ability. He might be able to catch Tsarukyan in a heel hook. He might be able to catch him in a guillotine. He might be able to find the back and work the submissions. He might be able to lock up an arm in an armbar or Kimura inside of those scrambling attempts and the wrestling transitions that Tsarukyan is going to have to use, because there is going to be a lot of grappling and they're going to go back and forth. I would not be surprised if Gamrot wins here, but I don't necessarily have a side that I want to pick, but I know I have to make a pick. We'll look at the stats very quickly. Reach, 72.5-inch reach for Tsarukyan to 70.5-inch reach for Gamrot. So Tsarukyan's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, but Gamrot's going to have a 3-inch height advantage. And I think the movement, the length, and the reach, and the way he uses his lateral movement and footwork is going to make it a little bit harder for Tsarukyan to close the distance on a guy who has a 3-inch height advantage. You look at win percentages, 39% of the wins coming by way of KO for Tsarukyan, 28% by submission, and 33% by decision. For Gamrot, 32% by KO, 26% by submission, and 42% by decision. Average fight time, that leans on the side of Arman Tsarukyan with 11 minutes and 31 seconds compared to 7 minutes and 43 seconds for Mateusz Gamrot. Knockdown averages, that actually goes on the side of Gamer with 0.22 for Tsarukyan to 0.49 knockdowns per 15-minute fight for Gamrot. Significant strikes, pretty close with both guys. 3.75 landed per minute for Tsarukyan to 3.79 for Gamrot. 47% significant strike accuracy rate for Gamrot to 48% for Tsarukyan. So very close, 3.75 to 3.79 and 48% to 47%. Strikes absorbed per minute, Tsarukyan is a little bit better defensively, but that's not surprising considering that a lot of the time Gamrot keeps his head on the center line. He doesn't really move his head much. He does have decent defense with circling away, catching, and parrying shots, but he doesn't really move his head off the center line. 1.36 strikes absorbed per minute for Tsarukyan to 2.69 for Mateusz Gamrot. 61% striking defense overall for Arman Tsarukyan to 64% defense for Mateusz Gamrot. Looking at the grappling, this is where it gets interesting. 3.47 takedowns per 15-minute fight for Tsarukyan, 5.83 for Mateusz Gamrot. You look again at the takedown accuracy, 37% for Tsarukyan, 40% for Gamrot. 78% takedown accuracy rate for Tsarukyan. A lot of those takedowns came at the hands of Islam Makhachev, which a lot of people can't defend his takedowns at all. So you can't really look too much at the takedown defense there, but 100% takedown defense for Mateusz Gamrot. Submission average per 15-minute fight, none on the side of Arman Tsarukyan, 0.49 on the side of Mateusz Gamrot. Now, I broke the fight down. I feel like we did a pretty decent job. Tsarukyan's going to have the advantage on the feet, but Gamrot is awkward. He's got weird angles with his shots, and I think that right hand's going to land for Gamrot. I think the jab's going to work for Gamrot. I think he's going to look to use a lot of the kicks because he might want Tsarukyan to shoot takedowns and leave his neck open or get into those scrambling positions, like the takedown attempts, the chain wrestling, the scrambles, the reversals, the sit-outs, the rolls, and he's going to want that. That's what he wants. He wants to make this a grueling and dirty fight. It's 25 minutes. I don't really know which side I want to go, and I said that earlier, and I'm going to stick to it here. It's such a tough fight to call, and you can't lean one side 100% confidently being like, oh, Tsarukyan's going to run right through Gamrot, or Gamrot's going to submit Tsarukyan right away. I don't know, but honestly, I think I'm going to lean with the grappling heavy approach, the scrambling ability, and the submission threat of Mateusz Gamrot over a 25-minute fight. I definitely think that Tsarukyan is better on the feet. He's got better kicks, better technique in the striking. He's definitely dangerous, and he's got the speed advantage. But over 25 minutes, that grueling, grappling heavy style is going to be something that I think Gamrot can definitely keep it up for 4 out of the 5 rounds. I don't know if he can go 25 minutes with that hard of a pace, but he is relentless. You saw it against Diego Ferreira. You saw it with the takedowns and the timing of the takedown entries against Jeremy Stevens. I think he's going to be able to take down Arman Tsarukyan, and I don't think that Tsarukyan has the best game off of his back. He's really good from the top. He's got great ground and pound. He's got good submissions, but if Gamrot gets him down, I don't necessarily think that, Tsarukyan is that big of a threat off his back, and Gamrot might be able to constantly get those takedowns in the second, the third, the fourth, and so on, and work his way to a decision or possibly locking up a submission. But overall, I think the fight is going to go the distance, and I'm going to lean with the underdog. It is not too big of an underdog, but I am going to lean with the underdog in the number 12 ranked Mateus Gamrot against Arman Tsarukyan via a 48-47 unanimous decision. I think he banks 3 out of the 5 rounds. I think the fight does go the distance. If you're going to put a bet on this fight, I told you not to touch it. Don't touch it from either side. But if you get like an over 2.5, over 3.5 for the rounds, then I would probably take that to go, because I think this fight's definitely going the full 25. It's possible to get a finish, but both guys are so well-rounded in each area of their game. But I got to go with Mateus Gamrot, the number 12 ranked lightweight, to defeat the number 11 ranked Arman Tsarukyan via a 48-47 unanimous decision, banking 3 rounds out of the 5. All right, that's going to be it for the breakdown, predictions, and analysis of UFC Vegas 57 or UFC on ESPN 38, Tsarukyan versus Gamrot on this podcast. These predictions will be uploaded individually to YouTube and probably uploaded as a full episode as well. So definitely be on the lookout for that today and following, longer on in the week. Really good fights here. You can tune into the Touch 'Em Up podcast anywhere you get your audio podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Stitcher, and many, many more. Definitely leave a like for this podcast. Leave a review for this podcast anywhere you can. Get it out to your friends, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your nephews, anybody you know, your training partners, anybody you know who's a fan of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts and wants to hear the technical side of the breakdowns of some of the best fights in the world under the premier organization. Double M and the Touch 'Em Up podcast is the way to go. So if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube, leave a review for the podcast, and get this out to anybody you wish. I do accept donations via PayPal. I don't know if anybody likes to do that, but if you'd like to support the podcast via PayPal, you can do so at, I believe there's a link to the podcast and a link on my link. There should be a link here in the description of the podcast, and then there's also links on my YouTube channel. So go out of your way to check those out if you'd like to support the podcast. You don't have to. Just listening and tuning in is enough, but I definitely would appreciate some support on that side. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Thank you guys, and have a good night.